Today we'll be talking about virtual network. So before we move ahead with virtual network, um, you would remember we spent like about 2 weeks learning about network, types of network. We also learned about how to create subnets. We also learned about the different classes of IPs. We also touched OSI layers, right? I explained all that in details. So the reason I explained that was not just because of the on-prem servers we were creating, is because I know once you want to work with the cloud, for people that will be probably security engineers in the cloud, I don't think you can do anything without understanding the networking. So you have to understand networking to some extent, right? So that was the main reason for that 2 weeks training on network. So before we just start with today, I just want to see if we can still remember what we were doing. So I will just bring this out and I just want to ask a question if anybody can still just remember what's happening here then before we continue. So this is let me pick this, and if I pick this I would so if I write these IPs, so I don't know, is there anybody that can tell me the number of hosts and subnets that can be created? Can you still remember? Hello. Okay, you're pressing your calculator. You can press your calculator. AC. Somebody have to kill you. So nobody knows the number of hosts we can have on this IP. Wow.
They're still working. 1 minute.
1 minute. Okay.
Will be taken
Ebenezer,
out.
No, no.
Ebenezer, you were not in our training. So don't, don't give us answers. Ebenezer, no, don't give us the answers. So who was here? I need those people that were here in the 2 weeks intense training. Those are the people that I need. I'm
Yeah,
bringing
we
out my
can create
calculator. Uh,
16 total number of hosts, and 14
okay,
will be usable.
okay, that's good. Exactly. So who else is for him or is against him? So I would
I'm
not be
for him. I'm for him.
okay. Yeah, so I will not be explaining how to do this now because I want to talk about VNet. But I just want, I had some people that went through the networking training, which I'll still do again. So for those of you that probably missed it, I will do the training again. You would get everything, why, how they are getting all of this. So what did you say the host will be, right? You said it will be, let's do the calculation together. I'm waiting. What did you do?
2
4 is
raised to
power 2.
power 4.
Okay. Then what else?
I subtracted the the network
Times 2.
hosts and the broadcast, the network IP and the broadcast IP.
Okay, so we have 14, right? That's actually what it should be. So we still have people that are on track, right? So if you also want to probably get the magic number, we already explained how you can get the magic number, how to know the IPs, right? The next set of IPs you will use and all of that, which is something we covered also that day. So I want to also make mention of something before we continue, right? You remember while we're doing that training, I said if you have different subnets. They can't ping themselves in a physical network that we create, right? You remember that I said that. So now that we are about to do the virtual network for Azure, it is a different case. You know, most people when they are working in like physical environments where they have VLANs and all of that, they create trunking so that they can see each other, the different network, right? But for Azure, it is different. So just in case I get to the area of subnets in Azure, right? And I'm talking of um, VMs that are on different subnets in the same VNet can ping each other. By default, there is already a route that has already been created in Azure. So that would work. So you should not say, oh, when we're doing networking, you were telling us about different subnets, not pinging each other and all of that while we were doing our hands-on lab and all of that. So it's different for the cloud. So let's leave this. So for those of you that probably can't still remember this, just try to refresh your memory. And for those that we're not here before, we are still coming back to that. We'll do that. Um, we'll do the networking again. So let's start drawing stuffs now. So we are going to go to Azure portal, but I just want to just show you how things work there. So imagine we have a network, right? So let's see this as our virtual network, which is our VNet one. So let me take this thing and just put it here. So this is going to be VNet. So let me call this VNet one, and then I will create another. So I think I'm not done with that VNet one. So let me just type VNet two. So this is VNet 2, right? So if I am creating my VNet now, I'm using the private IPs. Now I explained public and private IPs. But for you to always remember it, let me get this and just show you. So once you see this, right, you know most of you are familiar with the 192.168 that we're using and all of that, right? But then you should understand when you see this. Let me just pull up Notepad and just hold on my other screen. I will just get this. Okay, let me just hold on. Yeah. So when you see these IPs now, right, you know the class A, class B, and class C. We already spoke about it. So when you see IPs within this range, anything outside of this is a public IP. So if you're using a class A IP and you see them within this range, so you know that the highest number that these places can always get is 255, right? And then once you come across any class A IP that is within this range, that means the IP starting from 10.0.0.0 to 10.255, it is a private IP. If you see any IP within this range, just know it is private IP. And this, which is the one we were always using, you will see that this also is a private IP. So if you see any IP outside this, it is a public IP. That's why if you go to your browser and probably type "what's my IP," you would never see any of those IPs falling within this range because those IPs you're seeing are your public IPs. But if you go to your computer now, like we were doing before, and type ipconfig, right? What you will be seeing when you type this would be your you'll be seeing your private IP. So anytime you type this IP config on your command prompt, this is the range you'll be seeing those IPs that you would get back, right? So now when we are working with the virtual network in Azure, right? We work with the private IPs, and most times you'll see most organizations using this, right? When they are creating their virtual network in Azure. Why are they doing that? Is so that you do not try to create a conflict between your cloud infrastructure and the ones you have on-prem. So that's one of the reasons why you see most people they work with this particular IP, because most times if you're working in an organization, you see that these are the IPs they use for their physical servers and their private IPs. This is where you always see them picking their IPs from. You always see them pick the IPs from here. So just probably keep this particular IPs in your brain. I know at first, if you're still learning the network, you're trying to understand it, you might not really get these IPs, right? This range, but I will just paste it for you so you can just have it, and maybe you can always look back and see. So I'll paste that now. So for some reason, my team is still loading. So let me move that away while that is loading. So I would be picking my first IP for my VNet, which would be 10.1.0.0/16. So if you look at this IP now, do you have an idea what the number of hosts I'll get for that IP? Somebody can just tell me that, right? Somebody can tell me that, right? Sam, hello.
Can get up to
Let me
8,000.
You said what?
They can get up to 8,000.
No, I want the figure. Like I want you to punch it on your calculator and give me the exact figure.
okay. 65,536.
Exactly. So that's what we should be looking at when we are using this IP. Then you can now start doing your um minus and all of that. So, but for Azure, when you're creating your IPs and subnets, there are some reserved IP that Azure would reserve. So you might see yourself like when we're doing you say /24, you're getting 256 minus 254. Then if we give one to our router, we have 253, right? But if you go and try that in Azure, you probably see yourself having like 251 IPs, because Azure is actually keeping some of those IP. They are reserving some of those IPs. So now if we come to our virtual network, which I'll still show you, right? We can choose to create these two virtual network. Now, this virtual network that I'm creating is just the same thing with what we're creating for our servers on-prem that we're doing in our lab. So if you create this network now on Azure, for every network you create on Azure, there will be a subnet you will create for that network. Now, you have to be careful. If probably you want to have multiple subnets, try not to create your subnet with this same address. The reason is that if maybe I want to create extra two subnets here, right? If I want to create two extra subnets here, I can choose to say, let me create the first subnet here. So if I'm creating the first subnet, let me reduce this. I think I don't need that. So if I'm creating the first subnet now, I can come here and say this is sub one, and I will say this is 10.1.1.0/24. Yeah. So I've gotten my first subnet for this particular network, right? If I probably just created this virtual network and I did not create, I just created one subnet, right? I'm not creating two, I just created one, and I'm using the exact IP address for this virtual network, then I'll have problem creating a subnet. I'll show you why you have problem, because you can't create more subnets from it. So let me just say I've created my first subnet. Now I'm creating my second subnet. We'll do all of these. Now I will create subnet 2, which is going to be 10.1.2/24, right? No, what did I just do? Sorry. I think I'm still on track. It's just that I didn't add. Yeah. So I've created the second subnet. Now you can do the calculation yourself by this time. So that's why I did the training for network so that you would understand what is happening. So now I have two subnets now. Imagine I have VMs or resources, right? And these resources, I want to put them in different subnets. So before I always say they can't see each other. So, but in a situation like this for Azure, I can create a VM. What would look like a VM here? So I can create a VM. Let me use this. I can create a VM here, and I can create another VM here, and they can see each other. They can communicate with each other, and they're on different subnets. Now the problem where you will have them not communicating is if I have another subnet here. Remember, this is still in my portal, right? I created I have another virtual network here. Then I have a subnet here. Let me just put this subnet. So this is going to be 10.2.1.0/24. So now, if you know this is going to be the host will be 251. Somebody needs to mute. Okay, so the host will be, normally should be 254 from the calculation and all of that, but Azure is going to take their own IP. They will reserve their own. So if I have this other subnet right here, and I created another VM here, this VM from this place, this VNet cannot communicate with this particular. I'm muting this person. This person is still turning on the mic. So this VM from this place, yeah, cannot communicate with these VMs in this other virtual network. I don't know who is turning on their mic after I turn it off. So what's going to happen now when you have two virtual network, but then you want this particular VM in this virtual network to communicate with VMs in this particular network. That's where you hear people talking about pairing. So what does pairing do? Pairing would allow a VM in a virtual network, resources in one virtual network to communicate. Sorry, let me delete this. This is what I wanted. It will allow this resource to communicate with the resource in this virtual network. And it can be both ways, it can be one direction. That means I can choose to say, I want these virtual machines to communicate with this virtual machine, but I don't want the communication to come back. So I can choose to do it both way. I don't know if it is my mic or someone is actually okay. So now I can actually do it both ways. So what I can actually do to make this particular machine, this VM here, to see this other VMs is to create pairing. So in case you've been hearing about pairing, so this is exactly what pairing does when we are talking of virtual network in the cloud. Yeah, so this is exactly what it does, right? But then when we are doing this pairing and talking about all this, sorry, please, can you hear any sharp sound or it is from my mic?
I can actually hear a short sound.
I don't know where it's coming from. Okay, so when you
You have muted yourself. Oh.
Yeah, because I'm trying to know where the sound is coming from. Okay, so when you create this pairing, what this pairing does, it would allow resources from, it will allow the virtual machine from this VNet to communicate with the virtual machines in this VNet. Now, while we are talking about network, right? And we are also talking about subnets and how they can communicate with other virtual machines in another virtual network. There's something you would always hear about, which is network security group. Now, if you have your stuffs out there, like you create your infrastructure, you create your network, you cannot just go online and set up network without setting up a security measure for those network, because anybody can just get into your network and start destroying stuffs, right? So there are different ways in the cloud which you could actually control this security so that people don't just attack your network and all of that. So one of the ways is what we call the network security group. So for the network security group, what it does, it is used to filter network traffic between the Azure resources. So we have the network security group. We use the network security group to filter traffic, right? We filter network traffic between resources. Now, there's always a confusion most times with the firewall and network security group. We always have firewalls, right? But firewall, most if you're setting up your firewall, it will be sitting at the main entrance of traffic to your network. So, but I will talk about the firewall so that you will get to see the difference later. But for network security group, which has to do with filtering network traffic, right, between resources, you can as well create network security group. So you can probably just create a network security group. And when you create that network security group, you can either place it on your subnet or you place it at on your VMs. So now what the network security group does is just security rules, right? You can choose to say, oh, I don't want this port to be open on this VM. I don't want anybody to access this port on this VM. I'm denying access to this particular inbound port and all of that. So you can set security rules on a particular virtual machine or on a particular subnet. So when you're setting these rules, you also need to be very careful how you set them, right? Because if you set a security rule here, you can block traffic from this particular VM that is on the same virtual network from accessing this VM. So you can say if a network is coming from here, immediately it hits here, it cannot go anywhere, you block it. So at that point, that means at this point, nothing is happening. You can say, okay, I'm allowing network to get into this particular subnet, but if it's coming to this VM, block it. So that means network will probably pass from here, enter the subnet, but once it gets to this place, the network security group is going to stop the network from accessing this particular VM. So another way, which I don't see how you would do that, but if you say you're blocking network from this VM at the subnet level, and then you're allowing it at the virtual machine level, you know what is going to happen, right? If it gets here, it will block it. So it's not going to get to this particular, it won't get to this particular machine here because you've already set a rule that says once it hits this subnet, it should um bounce back, and that's exactly what will happen. It won't get here. So when you're setting or configuring your group, you have to know exactly what you're setting. So if you're setting all this, most times, like when people just go to create VMs in Azure, like example, when I think when we're doing the fundamentals, where I was just giving an example, this is how to create a virtual machine. And I went to create the virtual machine. When I hit create, you will see all this stuff will just be attached to the virtual machine by default. I don't need to create them. They will just come along. You'll see the NSG will come, NIC also, the network interface, right? Where that is connected to the VM. Everything will just hit your VM directly, right? Because you did not specify them. You just went to click on create, and you will see they will show you there. It's just that most times, most people they just go next, how to create a VM, and they are done. But when you have an environment that you probably want to work, and you have resources, you have machines that they need to probably assign IPs to, or they need to put them on a particular subnet, right? You would have to do all this planning before you start creating the machines. So if I'm probably trying to set up a network, maybe for a small office now, and we are thinking of having two virtual network like this, we can say, okay, this place would give here to, we can just come and say, anybody using this machine, once we see this person, we know they are HRO. If we see anybody using this machine, we know management. And then we can come here and say, if we see anybody using this IT, and you can choose to create another subnet here. So once you're creating your machine, you don't just hit create anytime you're creating. You can then choose to select the network, select the subnet you want them to be under. You can as well choose to say, okay, I don't want anybody from any of these places to be able to access resources that are in IT subnet. You can create all of that. So um that's just the basic explanation I want to give you before I start using more before I start giving you more explanation with the interface. Now you remember these are just our private network, right? You have to be careful when you're creating this so that you don't create conflicting IPs with what you have in your on-prem environment. And also, we also have public IPs. So you can as well create a public IP in Azure portal and attach it to any of these of machine if you want to during the creation process. So I will go to portal now. I will just try to see how I would create a virtual network, and then we'll just see some stuff that is going to be happening. Like you've been seeing us creating maybe fast server and we are done. Nobody's talking about the virtual network. So let's go to Azure portal and let's see how it looks like. So I would log into my Azure portal now. So this is it. Oh, no, 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 no. That's AD. So for those people that are like beginners, right, you should be careful when you're hearing Azure Active Directory and Azure itself. The Active Directory is just a service under the Azure itself. So you have to be actually careful when you're talking about both of them. So you don't just say, oh, I went to Azure and all of that. And what you're actually trying to say is Azure Active Directory. Yeah. So let's try this. So I'm logged in now to my portal now. Yeah. So there are a lot of stuffs now you can do here. So while we were doing our fundamentals, we have resource group where we can store resources that we want to use in similar resources, right? Into, and I showed you how to create it in while we're doing fundamental. So I would just create a resource group. I can come here and just click on resource group. Then there are some resource group here that I've already created since. So what I would do, I would just come here and click on create. And when I click on create, oh, what did I do? Okay, so now I'm using this. Yeah. So what I would type here is what should I give this? VNet. So this is going to be my VNet resource group. So I can choose my location where I want to keep this. So I can just choose Europe, West Europe. This is where I would be placing the virtual network I'll be creating. So I'll just go to next. So for tag, we already spoke about tag. You can choose to tag it the way you want, right? So I'm going to create that resource group. So I have that resource group that is called VNet ROG. So I can come here and search for virtual network. Yeah, so this is virtual network, right? I can now select virtual network. So when I select virtual network, so this particular virtual network, they probably just created themselves when I was probably creating AVD and all of that. So I don't think, oh, I think I created this for the AVD, right? I was creating an AVD, which I'll show you guys how to do it. So if I come here, I can now create. So let me just go back in case I'm fast. I search for virtual network. I'm right here. So I'll click on create the virtual network. So now I have to create the virtual network. I have to pick the subscription. Yeah. So now I would go to the resource which I created. So I can as well just create one here immediately. So if probably I didn't want to create the resource group earlier, I can just come here and create whatsoever I want. So I'm going to give this virtual network name. So let me just say VNet. Or no, I think I want the V to be small. VNet headquarters. So this is for headquarters. I'm just using that, and I will still put this in West. Yeah, so I'll go to review and create. So there are other stuffs you could probably do. Oh, sorry. Why did I do that? That was just too fast. So let me go back to the network. So this is supposed to be next, right? Because I don't know why so we have Azure version we is a secured way of actually logging into your resources. Even when you create virtual machine, you can actually use this to log in to your machines on the web portal. We have firewalls. We've not really spoken about firewall, but you can actually use it to also filter traffic that is coming into your um, virtual network. Then we have the DOS protection. So this DOS protection is more like when you have people trying to attack you, right? They don't know your password, but what they just keep doing is they keep sending like over thousands of username and password. They just keep trying it until one will work. So Azure can actually protect you from all of that. So I'm not creating all of that now. I will just go to next. So now this is what I actually would have where I would have stopped, and I was just jumping. So if we get here, there is add address space. So we already have address that is given to us now. So this address was given to us. I think I would have earlier I would have edited it, but I would still edit it. So if you look at the address space they gave us, right? You can see it's slash 16, right? And you can see the addresses. It's still the same like what we were talking about. The same thing you're doing in your physical network. So you can choose to probably change the address. You can choose to use IPv6 and all of that. You can edit that here. And if you now want to add subnet, you can see the subnet now that they are adding for me. But I want to edit this. Let me just delete this off. So I can choose to add my own subnet. So subnet, let me just give it um, subnet what should I give this? How many subnet am I going to create? So let me just say I'm creating one subnet. So the next thing I would do here is this. Let me just put 10.0.1.0, and I'm going to be using /24. Yep. So this is what I'll be using for my subnet now. I do not want to use this full IP range for my subnet. I won't be able to create another subnet. So that's what you should look out for. We also have NAT gateway, which we'll talk about, route table, security group. I'm not giving this to any network security group. We will still create our network security group. So now what I'm doing basically is I'm taking this IP they gave me. I can as well just change it and all of that when I'm creating it. But now I'm not taking the subnet. I can as well still go and add more subnets, but I'm just trying to add it here. So I've selected the subnet, right? So this is the subnet that I'm taking for this. And then I'll go to next, which is tag. I don't need any of those tag. Then summary, let's just do. So yep, I will now click on create. So before I was just jumping step, and probably if they, by default, the what do they call it? The subnet was the same with my IP address. I don't think I'll be able to create another subnet. So what I just did now, I just created a virtual network, right, for the headquarters of my office. So I can from here go to the virtual network, but if I don't want to go from here, I can just go to my resource group. I can always come back, and this is the resource group. So if I come to the resource group, I should see my virtual network here. So this is my virtual network. So if I click on this virtual network now, so you can see the virtual network I created, right? And if I come to subnet, you can see the subnet I created, and you can see the IP available, right? So this was not the normal IP calculation we're doing that you say, oh, this is what you get, and probably you give one to your router, and then you have maybe 253 and all of that. So this not the available host you'll be getting. So for Azure, you'll be getting 251. And something about this network, you can always come and see if you have a device connected. So there's no device connected on this network. I just created the network. I created this, the address space, right? So this was the address space I was given. So I'm using it, and you can see the address count. There's no device here. I have one subnet. So if I want to add another subnet, I can go ahead to add another subnet. I'll just click on add subnet. So if I'm adding subnet, I can just say subnet. What's this going to be? Subnet one. Let me just use one. Yeah. So if I'm adding another subnet, right, I just need to change this. Yep. So I've changed that. And for now, we're not going to touch any of this. I'll just save. So for people that did networking class, I was training you on creating subnet. This is where you would understand why we were doing the subnet. So I've created two subnets now, right? And I've created a virtual network. So let me just create another virtual network real quick because of time. I'll create the second virtual network now. So this virtual network. So I want to create a new virtual network. So I'm still going to use these, and I'm going to put it. Yes. So the name of this virtual network is going to be VNet branch. So I would still put this where we used earlier. Am I seeing? Okay. Yeah. So next, create and so yeah. So you see, we are still going through the same process, right? Which we would not touch now. So for the address space, right? This address space is the same with what we have before. There's going to be a problem. So let me let me try to change that. So this is going to be 10.1.00. Oh, yeah. So this is what I prefer. So I would take the 16 again. Yes. So this is the address space I want. I don't need this. Okay. So I've deleted the default one. So the one I have now is my new address space. I need to add subnet. I can allow them create for me, but I need to specify so I don't get stuck with the subnet. So I can use the same subnet. There's no big deal like in terms of name since they are in different distinct, but just for us to get branch A, let me just use this, although it's long, but it's fine. This is not clean, but so now I want to give this subnet. So this is 10.1.1.0. So I'm creating a new subnet and I would make this 24, right? And once I do that, I think I am good to go. We'll see how all this work, but let's just focus on this now. So I've created my subnet and I've created my IP range for the new network. Let me just go to tags. You can tag the resource the way you want, and then we'll go to summary to validate it. Once we validate it, we can now create this network. So let's just wait for this to create. So now we have been able to create two virtual network. So remember, these two virtual network, they can't see, sorry, you can't communicate with resource in the other virtual network because we've not set up pairing. So if I come here, let me just go back to my resource group. This is the resource group here. And yep, okay, so this is the branch I just created. So if you look at this, we have the branch, we have connected device. There's no device actually connected to this particular stuff. Subnet, yeah. So we have one subnet. Remember, we can add more subnets and other stuff. So now, if you look at these two network, I can choose to say I want to pair both network, but there's something I should do. Let me create a third virtual network so I can explain something also real quick. So I'm going to create a very quick this thing. I want to talk about pairing. So just in case we are trying to pair the three network. I know my diagram is too I did just two, it was just two network, but I will just try to explain it. So this is going to be VNet um tech. Oh no, let me just say resource. So this is where our resource will be connected to. Yeah. So I would do the same thing and I'm going to go to next. Next. So for this IP, I can't still use this. I have to just add a new one. So the new IP I'll be using is still going to be 10 dots. I used one before. Yep. So I'll use this, right? And I would make this 16. I'm just going to add this. So I'm taking this off. So I would add a subnet real quick to this. So this can just be subnet. Subnet. This was for resources, so it's all good. This whole naming, you can always just make it better for yourself. So 2 dots 1.0 and I will be using /24. Yeah, so remember we can create more subnets here, and you should know the point where you should stop when you're creating your subnet. You should calculate the number of subnets that this can take, and that's how you know where to stop, the way we were doing it. So everything is still the same way with the networking um class we had, that you say create a subnet for slash this thing. So if you can find the subnet for /16, so once you find it, you know how many subnets you can create. So once I'm creating subnets now, I already know how many subnet I can take and what the next subnet should look like. So it's the same thing with the on-prem physical network we're talking about. Yeah. So I'll just go to the resource. Like, I don't want to waste time. So I have three. Let me go to the resource group. Yeah. So I have these three network here. So what if I want this network, resources in this network, to be able to communicate among themselves, right? What I need to do at this point is to set up a pairing, right? So if I'm setting up this pairing, for me to set up this pairing, I would just click on, let me just go to headquarters, right? Yep. And then I would come to pairing. And when I come to pairing, I'll click on add. Now I can now give it pairing name. So this is probably headquarters trying to connect with branch, right? So I can just say headquarters and branch. Okay, let me just say headquarter. Let me just use caps, man. Okay. So I'm using headquarters to branch, right? This is headquarters to branch. So the traffic to remote virtual network, I'm going to allow it. Traffic forwarded from remote desktop. So now what this simply means is, if somebody is actually trying to access this VM, let's say I have this VM, right? What forwarding does is, if maybe we have another VM here, sorry, we have another network here, and the person can access this VM, the forwarding just simply means, if the person can access this VM, then the person can use forwarding, traffic forwarding, to access resources in this VM. So that's exactly what the forwarding means. That means I have a network here, and this network is pairing with this particular network. This network that's pairing with this network can access resources in this other network because it can communicate with this particular virtual network. So that's what forwarding is all about. So this routing would just leave it for now until we start dealing with routing. Then what we'll do next is so that's for that. Then the next thing we need to do is to do the second side. So what I mean by the second side is, if this guy is pairing with this guy, what is going to happen the other way around? So that's exactly what I will be doing now. So this will be branch or headquarters. Are we allowing this thing? So the virtual network deployment model, right, will be using resource manager. Before there was classic, but what we'll be using now is the resource manager. And this is I know my resource ID. Probably you have the ID to a particular resource and you don't know the exact resource. You can actually just use the um ID instead. So now we'll select the subscription. This is the subscription. Then the network, it is branch, right? We are trying to pair with. So this is for branch, and we'll leave the same thing the way it is. That means we're allowing the pairing from both sides. Both device can pair with each other. So what I'm going to do now, after setting up this, I will just click on add. So once this is done, yep. So this is updating now. So you can see I did this configuration in VNet headquarters, right? While it is updating, I will just duplicate this tab. So this is updating. I want to go back to, I want to go to the, let me just go to, let me go to the resource group and go to VNet. So this, you can watch this. This is for VNet headquarters. The configuration for the pairing is updating. So I'll just wait for it to complete. So it's connected, right? So now this device and that device have enabled pairing for both of them. So let's come to the other. We did it for branch. So let's go to branch. Remember, we did not come to touch anything right here in branch in terms of pairing. But if I should click on this, yeah, you can see there's a pairing that has been set up. So now if I choose to do another pairing with headquarters to that other VM, sorry, with the resource virtual network, I can set up the pairing, and since that forwarded is allowed, resources from there can as well access resources in this, communicate with resources in this particular VNet. So that's for pairing. So what we'll do next is I will show you how to create this virtual network and the virtual network and the subnets using PowerShell in Azure, right? We'll use the command in Azure Cloud Shell. We'll use it to create this network. And once we do that, I would then go further with the NSG and the rest of it. You will see how we are assigning them to the virtual machines when we are creating them. The NSG, you will see the way we would assign it. Public IPs will carry it and assign to a machine. We don't just create next and create a new VM, select another one like that. No, would have to plan how we would arrange our virtual machines. So for now, I would just pause at this place so I can just get as much questions before I would move on.